Matt Simon. You don't have a position on this?
I do not.
Okay.
Please, the committee, I just want to answer a few of the questions that have come up today. I'm not taking a position in favor of or against any of the three bills, frankly, because if I did so, I'm speaking on behalf of the Marijuana Policy Project. I work as a legislative analyst for the Marijuana Policy Project. Since 2008, I've been primarily working to pass a medical marijuana law through this legislature, and on a number of occasions, the chiefs of police have held my work on bills like this against the seriously ill patients who would benefit from that bill. So for that reason, I'm not taking any position. I'm just going to deal with mainly the federal versus state law question that's come up a number of times today. And I also want to make sure that the public policy poll does get submitted on behalf of Representative Tasker. Just very briefly by way of introduction, I appreciated the testimony from the students here. Reminds me of me in high school. I learned from the people who came and taught us about drugs that marijuana kills brain cells, that it's highly addictive, that you'll ruin your future if you use it. Killing brain cells was the big one, okay? I care about my brain cells. I'm not going to do anything to kill my brain cells. So I naturally thought alcohol was safer than marijuana until college when I actually started studying these things. It turns out marijuana does not kill brain cells. Getting drunk does kill brain cells. It will make you stupider, but that's neither here nor there. So as a freshman in college, I started studying these things. I helped a friend write a paper about it, and that led me to what's now 17 years of on and off researching these questions. On the issue of federal law, we've heard a lot of arguments. On one side, we can't do this because of federal law. On the other side, we can do this because we're a sovereign state, because we have the right to revolution, the right to secede, and the right to nullify federal laws we don't like, and all of these philosophical arguments we've heard. Does the state of New Hampshire have to threaten secession in order to change marijuana laws? The answer to that is no. This bill in particular, and I want to go through each of the bills very quickly because they're each slightly different under federal law. In the 70s, after the Federal Controlled Substances Act was passed, several states did decriminalize marijuana possession, simply reducing the penalty. There were a few court cases. It never got anywhere near the Supreme Court because all the courts agreed the Controlled Substances Act does not require states to enforce any particular law on marijuana. If you want to set it a $5 fine, $0 fine, $500 fine, whatever, that is a state issue. So not preempted by federal law, and even the federal government would not argue with that position, I don't believe. Interestingly, HB 337, which is the bill that would regulate marijuana similarly to tomatoes or oregano and would technically allow fields of it to be grown alongside the road, that, while I don't believe is federally preempted either, because it doesn't, here's what you need for the Controlled Substances Act, as I understand it, as courts have interpreted it. You cannot have a positive conflict between the Controlled Substances Act and state law. So for example, and let's use Senator Cohen's idea of putting marijuana in the liquor stores as a perfect example. That would be requiring state employees to handle marijuana and sell it to people. That would be requiring state employees to violate federal law, and whether it be for medical purposes or for recreational purposes, state employees violating federal law would not be immune from federal prosecution. Should the feds prosecute them? I think absolutely not. Could they? Technically, certainly they could. Just letting it run free would not be preempted under federal law, but having the state distribute it would. And the states that have tried to go that route with medical marijuana have found very quickly that they can't. That if they want distribution, if they want to do more than let a patient grow a few plants or have a caregiver grow a few plants, that they need for it to be private businesses that may be regulated by the state. The state may license you and tax you, but state employees handling the marijuana itself is where the firm line has come down. Just Monday, and I did invite all of you representatives, we went to Maine, a little field trip, a few representatives from the HHS committee and 2 senators went to a medical marijuana dispensary in Maine. Everything they do is illegal under federal law. Every product that they sell is illegal under federal law. The Maine U.S. Attorney has never indicated any problem or any issue with their program. There are 8 dispensaries that are regulated by the state that are serving patients. And since there is no federal distinction between medical marijuana and recreational marijuana, the feds refuse to make any distinction. It has no accepted medical use according to the federal government. State versus federal issues so far, this of course could change in the coming years because there is a lot happening in D.C. But as of right now, as long as it's not state employees distributing or handling or selling marijuana to people, the state can in fact do it without it being preempted under the Controlled Substances Act. Now, Colorado and Washington have just passed their laws. There are 2 parts to those laws. The first part is the possession of marijuana by adults 21 and over. Up to 1 ounce is legal. 0 penalties under state law. That part is definitely not preempted by federal law. I don't think we'll see any discussion of the feds telling those states, you must enforce laws against possession. The other part of that legislation is setting up a regulatory framework so that businesses can cultivate marijuana and distribute it and have it be taxed. And on that issue, the Justice Department has so far said, well, we aren't sure yet what we're going to do. The governors of Washington and Colorado both were opponents of the initiatives and amendments that were passed, but after they passed, both governors did say, well, I don't agree with this, but it is the will of the people in my state. This is our process. So they've both gone to D.C., I think multiple times, to meet with Justice Department officials to try to have dialogue with the feds. We are moving forward with implementing this. Please give us guidance on how you will and won't react so that we have certainty as state lawmakers, which I'm sure you would all appreciate on this issue, some certainty about what you can and can't do. And I think that that's something that will resolve itself one way or another this year. There are rumors that Vice President Biden wants to sue the states and try to keep them from implementing the laws at all, that there are others in the administration that want to let it happen, and I think we'll get some kind of answer. So that may be an argument for putting more and more of these bills into interim study to look at them in the off season. But as far as this bill, HB 621, that I don't think there's any federal law argument against. Okay, very briefly, there's a study about the 6-point decrease in IQ. I believe, I read that study, it was a few months ago. It's not super fresh in my mind, but I don't believe the authors of that study indicated at all that they thought marijuana use caused schizophrenia, for example. Their argument and their analysis was that some people have a predisposition to schizophrenia and other mental illnesses, and if they use marijuana heavily as teens, and it was heavy use, it's not light use or moderate use, heavy use by teens could accelerate the onset of a mental illness that a person is already predisposed to. On the other hand, there are many thousands of people in California and a couple of other states who are using medical marijuana legally for psychological issues, so that would seem to mitigate against it. The other study showing, that was both the 6-point decrease in IQ. That study, another researcher looked at all the same data and said, yes, we see a 6-point decrease in IQ among this population, but it could also be caused by the fact that these individuals were part of the lower socioeconomic bracket. And lower socioeconomic bracket, people end up with reduced IQs in adulthood, according to a fair amount of research. So is marijuana the cause for these people losing 6 points of IQ? I don't think that's established at all. I think there needs to be a lot more research. The federal government needs to get out of the way and let it happen. Finally, the gentleman from the Governor's Commission on Alcohol and Drug Abuse said that teen use rates are up in states that have passed medical marijuana and decriminalization reforms. Well, I'd like to see the statistics. There are 2 government surveys. One is the NSDUH and one is the SAMHSA. And I deal with this data a fair amount, and independent researchers have looked at this data a fair amount. Usage rates have stayed the same or declined generally in states that pass these reforms. Occasionally, opponents of this will disingenuously say, rates are higher in medical marijuana states. Well, it's true that they are. They started off higher. It was states like California, Oregon, Washington that already had higher than average marijuana use rates that passed these reforms.
Right.
These reforms aren't passing in Louisiana and Mississippi and Alabama that have very low marijuana use rates. So California, not a medical marijuana law I would urge you to copy. It's not, there's no regulation of dispensaries. It's been described as the Wild West. Marijuana is also decriminalized in California. Marijuana use among teens has gone down since 1996 when that law passed. So
Thank you
that's
very
my
much.
testimony. Happy to answer questions.
Representative Valencourt.
Thank you. I'd like to bring us back to where I tried to begin at 1 o'clock and where one of the police officers didn't want to even talk about, which was Amsterdam and the Netherlands. Because they are human beings and we can learn from them. So I would like to talk about it, and I think you probably have the best expertise to tell us a little bit about why Amsterdam has less use than we do, even though it's legal. We've heard these charges that there's more fires in Amsterdam or something. Do you have anything to tell us about Amsterdam and the Netherlands?
I don't follow Amsterdam very closely. It's a different model than anything that's been proposed here. Under international law, the 1961 Single Convention on Narcotics, which the United States lobbied very aggressively for the UN to adopt, all countries must maintain criminal penalties against cannabis. So the Netherlands, when they wanted to make it legal, knew that they couldn't make it fully legal and regulated. So you wind up with a de facto decriminalization in the Netherlands, where you have coffee shops are allowed to sell limited amounts to customers, but nobody is legally allowed to cultivate and supply to the coffee shops. So there's very much a gray market, if not a complete black market, that supplies the entire thing. So in that sense, you're not getting rid of the black market by going to a coffee shop model like Amsterdam. Their stated mission when they did this was to separate marijuana from the hard drugs that they were having so much trouble with. And based on, if that was their mission, they did succeed to a limited extent. They still have problems with hard drugs. They still have problems with crime and violence associated with the hard drug trade. But having removed cannabis from that, it certainly seems as if they've taken a step in a direction. I'm not going to comment on whether it was a good direction or not.
So this 1961 international thing is still in effect?
Still in effect, it is. And for example, when the gentleman from Colombia, I'm going to forget his name, but he wanted to stand up for the rights of the indigenous peoples to use coca leaves, and they're not allowed to do that because of the Single Convention on Narcotics. People have been chewing coca leaves for thousands of years in South America with, it's that kind of thing. And it would take, frankly, the United States, still the most powerful member of the UN, to reverse itself in some way for that to change.
All right, I have
Kurt,
her. She gave me
McNeil, no,
ginger.
you guys said no.
A ginger.
What
That was the worst thing
Yeah.
She loved it.
Yeah, I get my Valentine's Day tonight.
Happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
Thank you.
Madam Chairwoman, thank you for hearing my testimony. I emailed you my testimony this morning before 9 o'clock. The title of the email is HB 621. It's a very short email. I just want to reiterate what's in there. I quoted Section 18 of the New Hampshire Constitution that basically says that the punishment needs to fit the crime. And then I told you that during testimony today, you would hear everyone tell you, including law enforcement, that the punishment that is prescribed right now in New Hampshire state law does not fit the crime. I told you that they would tell you that they don't prosecute to the full extent of the law when people are caught with possession, because they know the punishment doesn't fit the crime. The punishment doesn't fit the crime. Rectify this law in accordance with the New Hampshire State Constitution. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for being here. Sam Evans? No?